This video is going to show you the basics and how you can get started on Edulastic. And we're going to start from the very beginning here, going to edulastic.com and going to join for free up here at the top right. Once there, we can click on that as teacher, and now we're going to set up our teacher account. You have over here on the right side a few different options: signing up with Google, sign up with Office 365, and sign up with Clever. Those three options are all single sign-on, so depending on your district, you will be able to choose the appropriate option there. The single sign-on option is a great way to make sure that you don't have to sign in every single time. With the sign up with Google, you can actually use Google Classroom to roster your students if you have a Google Classroom. And with Clever, it does the same thing, where if you have a Clever login with your district, you can actually roster your class using Clever. As I come over here to teacher name, if you decide to do that, sign up as teacher, and now it's going to ask you to join your school community. Now, the importance about this piece here is that you have the ability to add to a school or district library and also to look in the school and district library. So you want to make sure that you choose the correct school. So in this case, I'll go ahead and choose a school. I'm going to go ahead and choose a school here, Port Orange Elementary. And there it is. So I need to verify that this is the correct location and the correct district, and it is. And now here's all the teachers, and I'll proceed. From here, you're allowed to choose multiple grade levels. You do that by clicking, choose the grade level, click, choose the grade level, and so on. You're only allowed to choose one subject, but please don't worry about that, because even if I choose math, I'll still have access to all of these other subjects. And the final thing here is select your standard sets. We don't need to set this right now, but if you wanted to and you only teach one subject, it might not be a bad idea. So for math here, I can go to select your standard set, and I can say I want Common Core. And what that's going to do is it's going to help you filter through the standards later, and making sure that anytime you choose math, you don't also have to choose the standard set Common Core. It'll just default to that. I'm just going to cancel so we don't do that here, and I'm going to get started. And now we are at the main page. You'll get a little pop-up over here, and this is a good time to mention what that pop-up is. It's using what's called our intercom system, and when you click here, you're going to see that you can write a reply, which just means that you can send a message. You can also come up here, we can click back, and now it's telling me a little message. We're here to answer your questions about Edulastic. While you wait, why not search for your answer in the Help Center, and gives you a link. So you could take that link and post it. And that is just a link to our Help Center, which includes a variety of articles that will help you along your way and try to help answer some of your questions, as well as videos if we have videos attached to them. And then at any time, you can also come in here and click New Conversation and start a new conversation and talk to a live agent. With that Help Center, I'll also mention it's over here. You can see right at the bottom left, it's a little question mark. It says Help Center. You can click in there, and then you can send a little question here. We'll say how to print. Type that in, and I know that's not proper there, but you'll see that it brings up some little videos and articles that say how to print. So now we have created our account. We've looked at some of the help options that you have, and now I'll go ahead and just close out of this conversation because it takes up quite a bit of my screen. I'll click this little X here, and then I'll be able to see this My Classes. This is where you're going to create your classes, and you can do that either using Google Classroom. If you had Clever, you can use Clever, but in this case, I'm going to do Create New Class, and I'm going to fill in this information. So for class name, we want you to try and put in a common standardized name, something like Algebra 2, period 1, Kindle. So something like that, or maybe you just put, P1, Kindle, but try to make sure you have your last name in there. And the reason why is when the admin goes to assign an assessment or goes to look up data, it's just going to help them locate the correct class. We'll come down here, we'll choose a grade, so second grade, subject, math, standard set, and then whatever standard set you want. You can type in here if you wanted, so I can type in Florida and get Florida Mathematics, but in this case we'll just stick with Common Core. It already gives me a course name here, and we can just go ahead and stick with that. We really don't want to change that. Again, that's going to be some filter options for your admin, which is really helpful. Now we have to save our class before we start adding students. So now I have my options up here at the top. In this case, I have Canvas, but in most cases, you're going to have a Google Sync button up there, and that's what you're going to use if you want to sync your classroom to Google Classroom. And then you can also use a class code here. The class code is what the students can use to roster themselves to your class. We have a video on that, and we'll link that in our description of this video so you know how to do that. And if you want to add them manually, you absolutely can. We have the option to add multiple students, and you can choose between different options here. This one is Office 365 for this district, but there's also Google usernames for other districts as well. We have first name and last name and first name, which are also options. But the thing to note with first name and last name, or last name and first name, is that unless you use the search by existing students on the premium side, if you did this for your class and another teacher did it for the same student in their class, it's going to create different usernames. So we highly suggest using either Office 365 usernames or using Google usernames. Now, the Office 365 and Google usernames will be their entire email, so you'll need to make sure that you type in their entire email, which you can see right here, something like this. Otherwise, when you're on this first name and last name, if I were to type in S. Kindle here, what it does is it creates a generic account saying S. Kindle and then 4 random digits. So maybe S. Kindle 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and so now we're going to look for the question bank, but the first thing I want to talk about here is you're going to hear me several times mention this gray navigation bar, and that's just this over here on the left side. It's our navigation bar because there's things to click on that takes us to different spots. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to their gray navigation bar over on the left, and we're going to start with our question bank. Now we have question bank, which is going to be just the individual questions, and then we also have a library, which is going to be full of assessments. Now the filters are going to be pretty similar between the question bank and the library, but we're going to focus on the question bank in this part right here just to show you how to add questions, preview questions, author new questions, and then how to search for specific question types. So over here in the filter, it chose those filters that I chose at the original spot of creating my account. So I chose first, second, and fourth grade, and I chose mathematics, so that's why that's showing up here. But if that's not what I wanted, or I only wanted one grade level at a time, I could click on the X to X out of the individual grade levels, or just clear all to get rid of everything here. So now we'll go into grade, and I'll choose grade 4, for example, subject math, standard set, math common core. And now I have 4,163 questions just for 4th grade mathematics common core. Now, if I were to go through this list, it's just going to be a lot of different standards and a lot of different questions, which isn't extremely helpful. So what I need to do is go to select standard to choose my specific standard I'm looking for to make sure that I assign an appropriate test based on what we're learning that week. So on select standard, instead of clicking in this box, we're actually going to click the double green box. That's going to bring up my domains list as well as my standards list. So from here, I can choose an individual standard and get 110 questions, or I can just select all 4G standards. My suggestion is that you only choose one standard at a time, and the reason why is I can search 110 of only this question, and then make sure I have an appropriate amount of questions, maybe 2 or 3, and then I can come back and choose A2 and only choose 2 or 3 of that. Otherwise, if I chose all of these, I'm scrolling through 263 questions, hoping that I'm attaching different standards. So over here is my standards, so I can just click out of any standards that I did not want, so just 4GA1 here, and now I can look at those questions. To go a step further, you can go into collections and look at the school library, the district library, the public library, or Edulastic certified. The private library, to start with here, is just your private library. It's whatever questions you've created or any questions that you've used in the past that are within your library. The school library is exactly that. Anybody that has been able to join your school community will be able to add to this school library, meaning only people within that school will get that question. The district library is the same thing, but just now on a district library. The public library is where most of our questions come from, and that is just teachers creating questions and adding them to the public library. And then the final one is the Edulastic certified, which are the paid authors or the companies that are creating questions, like Engage New York, the different state assessments, illustrative mathematics is on there, Park assessments is on there. So we have quite a bit of Edulastic certified, and so if you see 110 questions, it's a good possibility that you can use Edulastic certified and still have quite a bit of questions left. So the positive here with Edulastic certified is these are the paid authors, so the questions tend to be of the highest level, but it does not mean that they're perfectly free of mistakes. So just make sure that at any time you click on the question itself and you actually look at it, make sure everything looks right. Just verify that it has everything you need. And the final thing here is the question types, and that is where you can search by a specific question type. And my favorite part of this is for ELA teachers, is when I click on this, I can go to passage-based. So ELA teachers generally need to have passages attached to their questions. And so if you choose passage-based, you're making sure that there is a passage-based question. So right here, here's the passage-based question, and there are 6 questions within that passage-based question. So just to show you what that looks like, if I click on my little preview button right here, it's just going to show me what that looks like. So let's go ahead and click on that. So here's the text over here. I can read the text, and then I can close it over here, and then now I'm just looking at what the question looks like. All right, so I'm going to take off passage-based here, and what we're going to do now is we are going to author a new question, and that is done up here where it says author new question. So once I click on that, I have my options. These are your classic question types, the ones that most websites are offering right now. But where we go above and beyond is we have a Math Tech Enhanced series here, and you can see quite a bit of questions. And on each one of these question types, you have a video that will actually show you how to create that question. And then we also have the ELA Tech Enhanced. Same thing, videos up at the top right. Many of them have their own specific features, so it's good to watch those videos, learn what those features are, to make sure that you're getting the most out of the question. I'll go ahead and cancel that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to review our assessment. But the first thing we have to do to review our assessment is we have to have questions on it. So I'm going to do that with this add button over here. Add, add, add. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to choose a different standard. Let's say I'm going to do A2 this time. Done. And add a couple questions from there. Now I'll go to review up at the top right. And here are all of my questions that I've added. So you're going to see here's the G12, here's the G11. Over on the right side is where you're going to see how many questions you have, how many points they're worth, and then also the standards breakdown. I'll come up here to the top and give it a name, Demo Assessment. And now I've named my assessment. Just to look at some additional options here and how to navigate through, you can reorder these questions. So if you said this one needs to be first, you can click, do reorder selected, type in the position you want it, and reorder. You can also select all of the questions or select individual questions and remove if you decided you didn't like the questions or if there was an error maybe. But if there was an error, you also have the option to just duplicate the question right here with this little plus button. Duplicate the question and then make your own edits. And now I can click on preview to preview that individual question. Add some different point values if I wanted one question to be more than another. Or I can preview the entire test up here and see what it looks like as a student. So this is what it looks like for a student. I can move my answer choices over and actually interact with it like a student would. I'll flag and move on from there. While you're up in these options up at the top, you can also use this feature right here, which is just adding from the question bank. And this is just going to take you back to the original screen if you decided I want 6 questions instead of 5. And then the one on the right is the author new question. So that's just a way to author a new question without going back to the question bank and trying to do that again. All right, so now we've looked at all the features of the review screen, and now we'll go ahead and do publish or assign. On the publish and assign screen, you have the open date, closed date, open policy and closed policy, and it's nice to be able to set that close date and say I want it to close at this time. But the thing you need to think about when setting that close date is, are you guaranteed to have your technology during that time frame? Are you guaranteed to have all of your students taking that assessment in that time frame? Now, it's relatively simple to just open the assessment back up if a student is not there and you need to open it back up to give them additional time. That is an option, but it might just be easier to set this close policy as closed manually for the first few times that you give an assessment. And that just makes sure that all the students can finish the assessment before it closes. So that just means that the assessment's basically never going to close, but it does. You'll be able to see it in reports. You'll be able to see a done status. You'll be able to see all the things you need to see with that closed manually in class without worrying about having to open the assessment back up for students that did not take the assessment. On Assign This To, you have your different classes that you've created. But just to show you here with the class names is I can select all of my classes to take this assessment. I can say just this class takes the assessment, or I can even say just this student takes the assessment. So you have 3 different levels, assigning it to all of your classes, a single class, or just to an individual student. Down here we have the superpowers. Superpowers are premium features, and they're really good in kind of making the assessment either secure or kind of randomized so students can't copy off of each other. And that's going to start right here with the release scores. When you release scores, you're able to tell them how they did on the assessment and give them that instant feedback. What you'll want to note is there's also this feature down here called Show Questions to Students After Submission. What that one does is it actually tells them what the question was, what their response was, and what the correct answer was. So if you're giving retakes, that needs to be turned off. If you have multiple class periods, that needs to be turned off. But don't worry with the release scores, because that only shows them how they did. They got a 73 and that they missed questions 1 and 4. Require Safe Exam Browser, you're going to notice that it says Windows and Mac only. This is a really nice feature in terms of locking down the browser, making sure they can't go to Google, that they can't access a calculator online, anything like that. The only thing they're in is Edulastic and taking that assessment. We have Shuffle Questions and Shuffle Answers, which does just that. It's going to make sure it's randomized so students can't look at each other's screen to get the correct answers. Show Calculator, we have these options, Scientific, Basic, and Graphing, and these use the Desmos calculators. These are only all or nothing, so you can't say I want a calculator for this question, but not for this one. Answer on Paper, that is just if you want to administer it on paper and you plan on manually grading, you can go ahead and choose that and then use our Express Grader, which we'll show later, to actually go in and manually grade. Require Password, this is just a way to make sure students don't have access to the assessment unless they're actually in your class. And the final thing we'll look at is the evaluation method. With evaluation method, this is those partial credits. So do you want to give partial credits, or do you want to give all or nothing? The important thing to note here is this don't penalize for incorrect selection. And what that means is, in the rare chance that your student chooses all of the options, they will actually get it marked correct because they did choose the correct answers, but they're not getting points taken off for also choosing the incorrect answers. So most likely you want this off, but then you also just have the option to do all or nothing, and then this feature doesn't really have any purpose. So all or nothing, which means they get a 0 even if they get 2/3 of the question correct, and then partial correct will give them the 2/3 points. So now I can publish and assign later, or just assign. In this case, I'm not going to be assigning to a class, so I don't need to click assign. I'll do publish and assign later, and the screen's going to be very similar. It's going to ask you your sharing level. Sharing level is when you can set to share this assessment with the public library, which is everybody on Edulastic, the school library, or the district library. So this is what we were talking earlier about. Now with link sharing is a great way to keep an assessment secure and make sure that only the correct people get that assessment. So if you plan on doing a common assessment between you and your colleagues, link sharing is a great way to do that. So I'll do link sharing. In this case, I'll do save, and then I can just take this link right here, copy it, send it through Skype, send it through email, send it through whatever communication platform I use with my colleagues to be able to access that assessment. That is assigning an assessment. In this case, we just published it, but we didn't assign. But those were the assigning steps of an assessment. And it's the same thing when we go to the assessment library. Okay, so now I have this demo assessment. It is, it's published, but it's just not assigned yet. So if I need to find that assessment in the future, that's when I can use this library. So I'll go to my library, and then I can go to authored by me. I have filters here, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this New York one here and apply. And these are going to be all of the mathematics assessments that I've created in the past. And there's that demo assessment. The demo assessment is also up here in my recent. It's the most recent assessment I've used or done. And so here it is. I can click there, or just find the assessment and click assign. And you're going to see it takes me right back to that same screen, which is really nice. So I'll just go back to my library. So again, authored by me, find the assessment, and assign. Now these are my own assessments. If I wanted, I could go to entire library. I can do the same kind of filters, grade 4, subject mathematics, common core, and I can even choose a standard, so 4G1, and apply. But what I want to note here, and why I clicked on this and wanted to show you, is I chose 4GA1, and you're going to see that 4GA1 right here, which is the standard I'm looking for. So it's great it pulled up that assessment, but you'll also notice it brought up 4OA, 4NF, MD, so it's bringing up other domains within the math curriculum. So the difference between the question bank and the assessment library is that the question bank will only bring you up questions that have that standard. The assessment library will bring you up assessments that have that standard, but it might also have additional standards on there. And so in that case, it might just be easier to use the question bank. However, if you're looking for something like this, then this is absolutely perfect. Also, if you decide that you want, most of these standards, but not all of them, you can click right here, anywhere within it, just not preview or assign. Click anywhere within it. And you can also do what's called create a new version. So I'll go ahead and click there, and there's create new version. And I can create a new version, and I can actually go in and edit this assessment, which allows me to delete questions or add questions. So in this case, this one has 5 questions. I could delete 2 of them on standards I don't need, and then go ahead and add 2 more questions that I did need. So coming back here to entire library, I'm going to go And I have my filters here that I really like. Maybe take out 4GA1 here. And I have my filters. I really like this one. This is the one I'm always going to use. I can do what's called save filter. And I can call this 4th grade math common. We'll just call it CC, Common Core. Save, and now you're going to see it show up over here. So if I were to ever have these filters reset to look for something else, I can click on it, and it brings that filter right back up. Okay, so now we've looked at the assessment library and the question bank, but what if we want to create our own assessment using a PDF? You can actually do that through Create Assessment, and then here's Create from PDF. So I can actually upload a PDF and add questions and standards right on it, and then that way I don't have to retype out questions or retype out answers. But in this case, we have a video for that, so we're just going to link that in our description at the bottom because that does have its own little individual pieces. So we're going to link that in the description at the bottom, so make sure you check that out. And now we've created our assessments and we have assigned our assessments, and now we want to look at the data. So the good stuff here. We can go to this button right here, which is called Assessments. This is where we're going to find any assessment we have given. And then you can filter up here at the top if needed. And you can even set folders if you wanted to organize your assessments. But in this case, we're just going to look at data. So I'm going to go to Assign to my classes. I'm going to find an assessment that I've given in the past. We'll do this one here. Click on it. Find the class period that has completed the assessment. So in this case, this is done. It has 10 students submitted out of 10, and all 10 are graded. So just click right on that class. And then now I'm able to look at the class data. Now when looking at this class data, it's very easy to see that question 4 was the struggling point here with having the most red and yellow, as well as this yellow over here on question 3 and question 7. You'll notice this little blue wavy line. It keeps popping up on my screen here, and that's just showing you the time spent per question. At the bottom down here, you'll see that the students have their own individual scores, obviously. So Abraham Lincoln, 54% here. That was our lowest. And then Susan Anthony at 100%, as well as Marilyn Monroe here. So 200s, which is great. And then Abraham Lincoln we need to look at, Mona Lisa, Thomas Jefferson, and Audrey Hepburn here. Now, if I wanted to look at this question 3 and try to determine why there's so much yellow and red, I can click on question 3. But once I click on question 3, I'm able to see the green here showing that they got it correct, red that they got it incorrect, and yellow partially correct. The initials here represent the students, and you'll also see the color to see which students got it correct or partially correct. AL here, Abraham Lincoln, got it incorrect. So I can click right on that circle, and it'll take me right to Abraham Lincoln. I can scroll through the list as well if I wanted to. And then I can give feedback over here, whether that's changing the point value or going right here and actually typing something in. Great job, you got 100%, fantastic. I'll go back a step here, and I'm gonna actually click on Abraham Lincoln. And this way we're only looking at Abraham Lincoln, and we're looking at why he might have struggled on this assessment. So over here, 4.92 is the total score out of 9. The time, 11 minutes and 36 seconds, and when it was submitted. October 22nd, 2018 at 11:19. So now I'm looking at his time spent per question, and I'm looking at all of his results. Edulastic already categorizes the answers for you, so you can go straight to incorrect and just look at his incorrect if needed. You can do partially correct to verify that he did get partial credit, or change the value over here if needed. And here's the second one. And then you can also give feedback. Here's the overall feedback to give the feedback for the entire test. Maybe come see me for a retake or for remediation. Okay, we're going to go back a step here. And so with your premium subscription, you also get access to Express Grader and to reports. So on Express Grader, you have a nice, quick, easy way to look at all of the results on one screen, which is fantastic. And then you can even look for trends by clicking on this little up and down arrow to actually put the answers in the order of correct or incorrect. So on question 1, I'm looking at B. I can talk about, why students are choosing B. I can even present if I wanted to, which is just going to change the names so students don't know who they are. And then that way you can talk about these results, and then you can have students say, oh, I think somebody chose B because, and nobody knows that either they got it incorrect or the person that did get it incorrect isn't worried about how their peers are looking at them in terms of, getting something correct or incorrect. This TEI represents the technology enhanced items. So if I click on that, you're going to see it's a multi-part. So you can imagine this would be way too big to fit in that square, and that is why they did not do that. It's just TEI. I can go through the entire question group here. Okay, and so now going out of present here, and now I'm looking back at the regular screen. If I needed to, I could go to score entry, and I can quickly type in new scores. If I was manually grading, this would be a great option. So I can go 0, 0, and you can see it's changing their entire total score. So 1 and 1. So I can do that. If I'm on response entry, I can actually go in and type in what their response was, and it will automatically grade. It's just a nice little feature to help you with those paper-based assessments that you want auto-graded. And then the final thing here is reports. And reports is going to give you access to all of those single assessment reports. That's going to give you some great data, as well as the student report card, which is something you can print out and give to students. Before we look at our assessment reports, I'm just going to go back here to the assessment and just show you a few additional options you have on the screen, such as looking at Abraham Lincoln, deciding you want to give him a retake. You can click on his box and do redirect, which will give him a redirect and open the assessment back up. When you do that redirect, it's going to give you some additional superpowers here that you'll want to pay attention to, such as show previous response. So do you want them to know what they chose the first time or not? And then show correct and incorrect feedback. Do you want them to know that they got number 1 correct or incorrect? So a couple important pieces there you'll want to make sure that you check. And then you can set that close date and policy just like we did originally in the assign screen. Then you just click redirect. Going back here, so I'll go back to my assessment, period 1 here. Over here in the more option, you have the ability to add or remove students. So this is where you can add new students that just joined your class, or remove any students that weren't supposed to take this assessment. You can also download the grades and responses on a CSV file if you wanted to. The mark as submitted and mark as absent are both done before a student completes the assessment. The mark as submitted is just a way to say a student has had long enough on this assessment, they just forgot to click the submit button, and you click mark as submitted. So now the assessment closes for that student, and then it goes into graded mode. Mark as absent is a great way to say a student is not in your class and to take access away from them so they can't take the assessment while they're at home. And then the final one here is print. And if I were to select all and do print, it would print out everybody's questions and answer choices they chose, and then that way you can send that home to the parents if you wanted to, but of course you can always just share account information so the parents can access their individual students' accounts. And now for the final piece here, which is the assessment reports. We can go into reports in the gray navigation bar. It looks like a little bar graph over here on the left, and here are our reports. In this report, you're going to find that we have multiple different kinds here. Before, you only had access to the standard gradebook if you use the free version. But now you have a single assessment report to really dive into the data of a single assessment across your classes. Multiple assessment report to kind of look at assessment data over time. Are they progressing or are they not doing as well as we expected? And then student profile report to look at an individual student. Because you have so many reports here, I'm not going to go over each one, but I'll just give you a quick rundown of each one to kind of help you understand why you might use it, or just kind of give you a look of it real quick so you can determine that for yourself. So the assessment summary here is the overall breakdown of the score for all of your classes, and then the individual class scores down here. So 50% compared to 0 for the other classes. It's a great way to compare across your classes. Peer performance is going to be pretty similar here, but now you're going to see the comparison of the actual comparison percentage here, saying that the district score was a 17%, and that's just comparing this 50% to all of these zeros. And now you get that little breakdown here. Question analysis. This is a great way to determine which question was the most hard to your students, which was question 2 in this case, at a 0%, on performance. Response frequency. This is going to help you determine misconceptions or what distractor was chosen most on some of the questions. Like in this one, for example, question 1, we had 100% chose A and nobody chose any of the other options here. So you can imagine if somebody chose, 30% B, 30% C, and then 40% A, you'd be able to get that breakdown and determine, B and C were the most common errors that students were having. And then you also get the question type right here, which I think is a really nice way to determine which question types the students are struggling with most. So then you could determine, is it the question type they're struggling with, is it the question itself, or is it a little bit of both? Performance by standards. This is just going to break down the standards. In this case, this assessment only had one standard, so we're only going to see the breakdown, that one single standard compared to those students, and you'll get to see that just determining which standard was the weakest across the grade level, or across the assessment and across your students. And then the final one here is performance by students, and this is just going to give you the breakdown of where students scored. In this case, one student scored within the 1 to 2 range, and the other 2 students scored in the 0 to 1 range, or just scored a 0, as you can see over here. What you'll want to do is do this refine results to help you with these reports. So in this case, I was just looking at this assessment, test check 01, but if I needed to change it, I could go to a different one, like that 6th grade math with question types that we were looking at earlier. So I can change my assessment to determine, the assessment data for that specific assessment I gave. And then I also have some additional options like choosing the course, class, and the assessment type, whether it was common or given by an admin, or if it was a class assessment. And then we'll go back to reports. Your multiple assessment reports will show your performance over time. So it will show you all of the results across multiple assessments. What you'll want to do is this refine results. And again, choose some assessments here. In this case, because we're looking at multiple assessments, I can click multiple assessments to look at. And you're going to want to do this as far as looking at common domains or common standards across the assessments, or otherwise you're going to be comparing geometry to a writing assessment, and you're not going to get very good data there. Peer progress analysis, this is just going to show those trends, and again, you'll want to choose those multiple assessments to be able to actually get a true trend on similar domains or standards. And then student progress is the individual progress here. So peer progress was by class, student progress is by the individual student. And then the final reports you'll want to look at here that are available on your premium side is the student profile report, and this is looking at the individuals. So student profile summary, and now I can see, this individual student, Abraham Lincoln, for example. I can look at his data and determine over time how he's doing, as well as look at the domains that he's struggling with or doing really well with. In this case, this is just the domains, but I can go to student mastery profile and look at the individual standards. And then I can also do student assessment profile to just look at his assessments over time. So if I'm looking at this student here and I am doing a maybe a parent meeting or just a meeting with the student himself, I can actually click on the assessment if it's blue, and that will take me right to the assessment so I can read the response and try to determine why the students did not do so well on that assessment. And now we're done with our Edulastic 101. Remember, this is just the getting started, so this does not include everything that you'll see. We have an Edulastic 102 video that I'll link in the description, and with that Edulastic 102, that's going to show you some of those premium or enterprise options and some of the additional ways to manage assessments and things like that, just to give you a little bit more information on our platform here. So this was just getting started, and if you have any questions, remember you can always come down here to the chat. You can self-service and look up some answers here, and you can also go to YouTube and Edulastic channel, and then you can get that information from there as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, but otherwise, good luck with your Edulastic journey, and we look forward to working with you and any of your colleagues that jump on board with us. So thank you for subscribing to Edulastic, and we look forward to working with you.